So, who's responsible?
Me!
Yeah, so who's responsible this week?
You!
Sometimes. I remember about 36 years ago, my dad had died 3 years before and left my mom with an estate where she was able to live for the rest of her life. And she didn't have to work, and she was, living her life. And she called me and she said, I feel like my life is empty and I want you to pray with me. I want you to pray with me that this sense of emptiness and this heavy feeling will lift from me, because it's just so heavy. And I said, well, Mom, what have you been planning to do, like, in your life? What's your purpose? And she said, I don't want you to talk to me about that. I just want you to pray with me that I get over these blues. And I said, she's younger than I am right now. And I said, Mom, anybody, and she told me I could tell you the story. She said, Mom, anybody who was at your stage in life and didn't know what their purpose was, wasn't moving ahead in a purposeful way, would feel that way. And she said, well, I don't know what my purpose is. And since I've been here in this church, that's the number one question I've been asked is, I don't know. I don't know what my purpose is. What is my purpose? I hear this over and over again. And so I said to my mom, well, maybe there's two questions you can ask. One is, what you really enjoy doing, what gives you a sense of satisfaction, and the other is what you're really good at. What are you really good at? She said, well, I really enjoy going on cruises. I like cruise ships, that's fun. And I really like public speaking. She was in Toastmasters. And I said, well, then what are you good at? She said, well, I've won the regional best speaker for Toastmasters now for 3 years, and I'm pretty good at that, so I feel good about that. Also, she said, I'm always the winner at Weight Watchers. She's been a Weight Watcher. She was one of their leaders, and she says, what do I do with that? And you know what she did with that? She became a traveling weight control seminar giver on cruise ships. She offered her services to a cruise ship company and spent the next 10, 12 years doing that. Now, your soul's purpose is not, that this is what you're waking up to in this moment, is not necessarily going to be about, as that story I was sharing just before the meditation, taking a trip to Paris, first class or coach. It's not about that. But it may show up like that. It's not about being on a cruise ship and giving seminars. So many people say, oh, my purpose, I want to fulfill my purpose. I want it to be, I want to become a unity minister. Well, good luck with that. But it's not that. What is your soul's purpose? I am open and receptive to my soul's purpose. Together? I am open and receptive to my soul's purpose. And you are the one who's responsible to wake up to it. But sometimes your soul's purpose doesn't come to you until you go through an experience that makes you realize, wow, what I've been valuing in my life isn't really what I want. At the end of your physical life, they say that there's a life review. And I know people who they can remember their life review or had near-death experiences where they experienced their life review, the old adage, your life passed before you. And when you have your life review and you evaluate this lifetime, it's not going to be about, wow, I sure was comfortable. Or, gee, things were sure easy. Or, you're not going to feel a sense of fulfillment with, oh, well, I avoided a lot of problems and was really safe. No. It will be how you engaged with the resources of your soul, how you moved out of the difficulties in your life, because here's a spiritual principle. The spiritual principle is this: the greater the problem, the greater the growth. The greater the difficulty, the greater the fulfillment of your soul's purpose. And you say, I don't want that. Yes, but here's the deal. The reason why you're here on earth is to grow spiritually. It's not to accomplish things in the outer or to achieve things, although those things show up. Jesus said, seek first the kingdom. What are you doing to fulfill your soul's purpose? And that certainly can show up as being a traveling weight control consultant on cruise ships or flying to Paris or whatever that is. But there's a deeper understanding to this. And there's that wonderful story. I don't usually read big, long Bible quotes, but I'm gonna. Jesus went on to say there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said, Father, give me my share of my property and my inheritance right now. So the man divided his property between his two sons. After a few days, the younger son sold his part of his property and went home with his money, went to a far, far country, and wasted all of his money in reckless living and spent everything he had. Then a severe famine spread over that country. He was left without a thing. He went to work for one of the citizens of that country who sent him out into the fields to take care of his pigs. He wished that he could fill himself with the bean pods that the pigs ate, but no one would allow him anything to eat. Finally, he came to his senses. He said, "My father's hired workers have more than they can carry to eat, and here I am about to starve. I'm going to go back to my father." He was still a long way from home when his father saw him. His heart was filled with pity, and he ran. He threw his arms around his son, and he kissed him. His father called to his servants, "Hurry, bring the best robe, put it on him. Put a ring on his finger, shoes on his feet. Then go and get the prize calf and kill it. Let us celebrate with a feast. My son was once dead, now he's alive. He was lost, now he's found." And so the feasting began. But in the meantime, the older brother was out in the field, and on his way back, he came close to the house, heard the music and dancing. He went to one of the servants and he asked him, "What's going on in there?" "Your brother's come back home," the servant answered, "and your father has killed the prize calf because he got him back safe and sound." The older brother was so angry, he wouldn't even enter the house, even though his father begged him to come in. He spoke back to his father, "Look, you, all these years I've worked for you like a slave, I've never disobeyed your orders, and what did you give me? Not even a goat to have a feast with my friends. But this son of yours has wasted all your property on prostitutes, and now he's coming back home and you're killing the prize calf for him?" "My son," the father answered, "you are always here with me. Everything I have is yours. But we've had to celebrate and be happy because your brother was dead, now he's alive. He was lost and now is found." Now, there's a lot of meanings to this. But the truth is, with everything in any mythological story, any scriptural story of any world religion, including the Bible, the metaphysical meaning of this is that you are every character in this. You are every character in this. Certainly the Father is Father God and all of that, but there's not a separate source within you. That which you're coming home to is that which you truly are in your heart of hearts and the essence of your being. You've got to come home to yourself, to your real self, to your true self, to your spiritual self. The other character, the older brother, that's that self-righteous spiritual ego that puts itself above everybody and says, "Well, I'm sure glad I'm not like that person. You know, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to." But who is it? Who is it who gets the greatest celebration? The greatest celebration goes to the one who wakes up in the middle of this emptiness, in the middle of this purposelessness. You know, the greater the problem, the greater the growth. The greater the difficulty, the greater the overcoming. And so in your life, look at those areas that are the sorest spots, because those are the ones where you're going to grow the most. I'm going to grow the most. Together, I'm going to grow the most. Engage yourself. Plug yourself into this possibility. I remember when I was hitchhiking around the country in 1972, and I still remember this guy when I was hitchhiking into Houston, and I had been sleeping by the side of the road because I couldn't get any rides, but of course by the side of the road you don't sleep much. So I was so tired, I kept falling asleep, kept asking me to please wake up. I just want you to, keep me awake. And so he wanted to tell me about his life story. And he had the most interesting story. He said he'd gone through an accident, I believe, maybe about 5 years before. And in this accident, he was put in the hospital for, 6 months or a year. And he said he rethought his entire life. He said, "My life was materialistic. It was all about accumulation of things." He was working for an electronics company, and he was doing all these different things. And he said it really, it was an empty existence. Not to say there's anything wrong with working for a particular company, but he said, I wasn't fulfilling my life's purpose, so I was lying there, and I was immobilized for several of those weeks, and I realized, what would fulfill my purpose? And he ended up opening up a homeless shelter and creating a homeless food bank and doing all these things in Houston, and it fulfilled his purpose. Now, I'm not saying most of us are not going to do that. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm saying there is a spiritual fulfillment of your soul's purpose that has to do with engaging yourself with your spiritual growth. Showing up every day in a different way. Showing up in a different consciousness than perhaps you've been in. Not playing it safe, not doing the expedient thing, not, getting along, going along, or just entertaining yourself. You're not going to engage with this. What is it that you got to let go of in order to fulfill your soul? Remember I've shared that there are 3 steps there are 3 steps to fulfilling our soul's purpose, to achieving anything. It's what do you want, what's in the way, and what are you going to do about it? What do you want, what's in the way, and what are you going to do about it? And so, what do you really want? Well, in order to fulfill that soul's purpose, you've got to assume a sense of responsibility. Remember in my first church, maybe my second person I ever counseled was a guy I'd never seen before, and I frankly never saw him again. It's not one of those success stories, but it was a wake-up call for me. He came in and he shared with me the story of all the things that were going on, all the areas where he'd been victimized in life. And these were real legitimate things. He was talking to me about it. I listened with compassion, and he went deeper and deeper. He dotted every I and crossed every T. And finally he got to a point where I started sharing with him, well, here are some different steps you can take. Here's some spiritual practices. Here's something. And to everyone he said, no, I tried that. That didn't work. No, I couldn't do that. Oh, I don't think that's going to work. And he went on. And finally he said, nothing's going to change in your life until you realize that you are responsible for changing the quality of your life. And he says, that's not true. It's not my fault. I'm not to blame. I said, you're right. You're not to blame. It's not your fault. There's a difference between blame and fault and responsibility. Taking responsibility is being at that point of purpose, at that point of understanding. And he'd shared with me, he wasn't a part of our church. I still don't remember why he walked into our church, but he was a devout Catholic. And so I shared with him about the life of Jesus. I said, look at what his life says. It says, nobody, it's almost like he was saying, nobody, none of you is going to be crucified and put to death by an angry mob, but you can overcome, you can take responsibility. I said, he took responsibility for those conditions. It wasn't his fault that they were doing this, but he did take responsibility. And how did he do it? Well, he turned this great negative into a great positive. He says, how could that be? How could the cross be? The cross is a sign of triumph. I said, yes, but to the people in Jesus' day, the cross was a sign of the worst form of capital punishment. This really disturbs people when I talk about it, so strap in. But it's just, I said to him, it's just as if you're driving, all these crosses on top of all the churches? It's almost as if they had hangman's nooses or electric chairs on top of them, because in his culture, that was the most negative symbol in their culture. Today it's positive, because what he was saying in essence was you could take the greatest negative and turn it into the greatest positive. That he turned the crucifixion into the resurrection. That whatever it is that you're facing in your life, you can turn it into something positive. And maybe I planted a few seeds. I never saw him again. I hope it made a difference in his life. But that realization that I'd never really been clear on came to me, which was, you are responsible for the quality of your life. That no one can be a miracle worker in their life or the life of anyone else unless or until they are willing to take responsibility for the quality of their life right now, because no one can make a change in their life unless they're at a point of power, a position of power. I am at a position of power. Together, I am at a position of power. And I had shared with him that Jesus took the raw materials of his life and turned them into something positive. And I even went into a little bit of a Bible study story. I said, Jesus was a carpenter's son. I asked him, what's his career? He said, well, he was a carpenter. I said, in his culture, a carpenter was a tekton. In Greek, it meant a builder. It was an architect. It was a construction person. It was a builder. It wasn't just a carpenter. It was somebody who conceptualized and then built something, created out of raw materials. And in a similar way, he was demonstrating that we're to take the raw materials of our lives, and some of our materials are very raw, and turn them into something positive. And later I discovered, I was reading about this, about a rod of iron. A rod of iron costs about $10, but if you turn it into needles, it's about $20,000, and if you turn it into watch springs, it's about $500,000. It's the same basic substance that's been worked with. And in your life, there's raw materials, there are things and potentials that you can work with that will turn your life into purposefulness. But of course, the first question is, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And I don't mean avariciously or materially, because it's about fulfilling your soul's purpose. But what do you truly want? I was reading a story. I've been going through my old files, and I read this old story about Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, one of the most famous justices of the Supreme Court. And he was about 93 years old, because he was on the Supreme Court very long. And he was on the Pennsylvania Railroad, and he couldn't find his ticket. And the conductor was asking for his ticket, and he couldn't find it. He looked in all his pockets, and finally the conductor looked at him and says, "Oh, I recognize you, Mr. Justice Holmes. Don't worry about it. When you find your ticket, just mail it into the Pennsylvania Railroad. It'll be perfectly fine." And Holmes looked at him and he says, "Young man, the problem is not that I lost my ticket. The problem is, where was I going?" So, where are you going? What is the direction of your life? And if you don't know the direction that you're moving in your life, if you're not in touch with your soul's purpose, maybe somebody else will pick that destination for you, or you'll just be buffing it around. There's an image that came to me this morning in meditation, which was and it's kind of an odd image, of soul nectar. Soul nectar, that we're all hungry and thirsty for a spiritual fulfillment, and that what we're looking for is the nourishment and the spiritual fulfillment of love and peace and joy and being connected with purpose and moving into the world and making a difference in the world, but first of all finding that peace within ourselves. And that's that nectar that we just want a sip of. But the beauty is that it's not found outside of ourselves, it's found inside of ourselves at that point where we make the decision that we're going to live from our soul's purpose. And we get in touch with that, and we look around us and we say, okay, where's my soul's purpose showing up here? How can I, we've got an outreach program we'll talk about during announcements, but how do I engage this? What do I do with my neighbor? How do I show up with my family? How do I engage, not codependently, but in a healthy way? And then more important, how am I engaging with my own soul? What willingness am I bringing to my own soul's growth? What is it you want? That's the first step. The second one is, what's in the way? This is a review of something I teach a lot, but what's in the way? What is in between you and what it is you want? It always comes up, that second force. It always comes up for you to clear away those false beliefs, those things that you're holding on to, that don't serve you, those things that are, what is preventing you from fulfilling your soul's purpose? For a lot of us, it has something to do with the internet, but others of us, doesn't mean that we shouldn't have hobbies and pastimes and things, but what's taken away the time that we should be spending on, or could be spending, should's not a good word, could be spending, a possibility of connecting with our soul's purpose, with that peace, with that purpose, with that life and that vibrancy. Where is that what is coming up? One of the places where we have something coming up that prevents us is called homeostasis. Homeostasis is the desire for a cell or an organism or a person to keep everything the same and make sure there's no changes. And there's a reason for this, because keeping stability is important for a cell or a person or an organism or an organization, because you can't really grow without stability. But if there's too much stability, then things calcify and you get broken down. And we all know people like this. We know ourselves when we're acting like that. I'll never forget the woman in my first church, and I've shared this many times, who everybody told me had come to church maybe the last time 7 years before, but she had gone blind with cataracts but never got surgery for it. She just wouldn't make a change. And finally her kids made her do it. I mean, one of those kind of things. They really took her in hand. They took her in. She got her surgery, and I was told, you need to call this woman, whom I never met, by the way, introduce yourself and whatever. So I called her up and I said, "Hi, I'm the new minister in the church, and I just went, how are you doing?" "Terrible." And she said, "Well," I said, "Why? What's wrong?" She says, "Everything's so dirty." Sometimes when you move forward in your purposefulness, you find out that there are things opportunities. I said, "Well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your opportunity to see the things that need to be cleaned up." And although she never came to church after that, she did call me periodically, and I'd call her. But where in your life are you afraid of making a step in your life because you want to keep everything locked up, you want to keep everything the same, you want to keep in that homeostasis? I remember a woman coming into me, and she was sharing, she had spent quite a bit of time in the mental institution, and she just looked at me, she says, she was from Oklahoma, I'll never forget this, just, "I feel like the little birdie that got stuck in the cow patty," and then after a while said, "Well, It's warm, and I can get used to the smell if I don't mind it too much, but now it's starting to dry, and I'm afraid I might get stuck here. And so we began to work with this. She ended up being, she's passed on many years ago, because that was 35 years ago, but she ended up being the vice president of our board. She ended up being this dynamic person. And the very problems that she was dealing with had no opportunity to change until she engaged with them. She was in an abusive marriage. She took the steps she needed to, and her husband did, and they ended up having a glorious time for the remaining years that they had together. It was only possible because she was willing to get out of the cow patty. She was willing to get out of that homeostasis, to keep everything the same, don't take any chances, and get used to just kind of getting along, going along. Are you living half a life, or are you living your life full out? And that doesn't mean in an outer materialistic sense. It means fulfilling and getting in touch with your soul's purpose and your soul's growth. Well, there's what do you want, what's in the way, and what's the third one? So what are you going to do about it? There's a lot of people who would rather complain about how thirsty they are rather than get up and get a glass of water and get a drink. What are you going to do about it? You know, sometimes you have to activate this. And doing something about it is not necessarily primarily about taking a physical action. Often, and usually, it's about taking action in consciousness. Finally, in this case of this prodigal son, he came to himself. He came to himself. I come to myself. Together. I come to myself. It means he woke up. He came to himself. Oh, I can do something about this. Oh, I can take spiritual action. I remember when I was running the Youth of Unity, one of the youth leaders in Texas told a story that stuck with me over the years. It was during the time when there was gas shortages. Some of you remember the gas shortages. You couldn't get gas, but he still had to take these kids to the rally. He was in Austin. The rally was in Dallas, and there was no gas that day. He had just enough gas, and then he figured, well, somewhere on the road I'll get gas. And then it was, I think, 1, 2 in the morning, and there was no gas. And he coasted, he ran out of gas, and he coasted to a stop right at a gas station, right at a 7-Eleven, and that was open, except for they had no gas. So the kids are out running around, frolicking, because, hey, there's no mom, there's no dad, and it's 2 in the morning. So they're having a great time, but he's feeling deeply responsible. And he just went and he grabbed the payphone outside of the 7-Eleven, and he picked it up and he started talking to God. He says, okay, God, this is John. You told me to take these kids to the rally, and I'm doing what you told me to do, but if you want them to get there, you're going to have to do something about it, because I need some gasoline and I need it now. Amen. Click. He heard a sound behind him. It was he turned around and horrified. There was somebody who was listening to him doing this. And the guy says, who were you talking to? God. Well, I think he heard you, because I live 2 blocks from here, and I'm turning on an engine on my car, and I got a half a tank of gas in the car that's just sitting there. It's going to take me weeks to rebuild it. So if you want that gas out, we can siphon it, we can get it here for you. And so I'm saying this because, okay, put it out. Put it out. If there's a need in your life, put it out. Cast your seed. Put it out. Engage yourself. Do the affirmation. Do the thing that you need to do. Put it out. I put it out. Together. I put it out. And I engage my soul. Together. And I engage my soul. So let's just open our hearts and our minds and get in touch. Just get in touch with this question. Just ask the question, if I knew what my soul's purpose was, how would that make me feel? And just feel it. If my intuition could provide for me the knowing of what my soul's purpose is, what kind of feeling would I have? How would life look to me? What sense of well-being would I have? These are my first steps towards my home. And I recognize that in that story, as soon as he got close enough to be seen, his father rushed to him. This is the grace of God. We put forth our effort, and it is met with a tremendous response. And so just assume, if I already knew what my purpose is, if I was already fulfilled, how would that feel? What would that be like? How satisfied would be my soul? And just sit with this for a moment. And recognize that grace is the matching energy, the matching funds from God. We place forth our effort, and that grace comes forth to meet our effort. We've inserted this cause. It will roll out. We've placed forth our desire. We have put it out. Thank you, God. And so it is. And this is our chance to move deeper into the presence. So just take a deep breath. Let it out. Open your hands. Let go of your papers. Become aware of where you are. Take another deep breath and let it out. And move into this now moment. This experience of the precious present. And just become aware that right where you are is the opportunity to wake up, to come to yourself, and to make a new start. Every one of us has a chance in this moment to awaken to a new potential, to a new possibility. Now, first, we get in touch with the yearning of our heart, the deep yearning of our heart for something more. Our deep desire for the essence of our soul to feel that love, to experience that joy. To know that purpose, to feel that support, to experience that peace. And we feel the yearning, the desire, the longing for that something more. And we activate it by just asking ourselves, if I were already in touch with my life's purpose, how would I feel? How fulfilled would my heart be? If my mind were still and my heart were open, if I felt a great connection with my spiritual source, if I could come home to my true self, what would that homecoming be like? What a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, a fulfilled longing, of completed desire, of well-being. How loved would I feel? How appreciated and supported would I be? If I were living the life that my soul wants me to live, how peaceful, how full would be my heart. And just feel it. Assume it. If I knew what my purpose was and I was living it full out, how centered and quiet would be my mind? How connected would I feel? What would be my capacity for well-being and support? And take this into a quiet space and keep asking these questions. If I already felt loved, what would my heart feel like? If I already knew my answers, how open would be my mind? come home to yourself and move into this quiet space. Moving yourself back into this physical space, feeling your well-being, feeling that your body and your emotions and your mind are in perfect alignment. Fully attuned to your soul, assuming that you are already one with your source, that your purpose comes into your awareness with a great sense of peace, deep satisfaction, and comfort. And now we know we've established this, we've inserted this cause, and it will play out. The effects will move out into our worlds, and we say thank you, God. And so it is.